I had my son almost drown on my watch because I was really stressed. I already was doing this work, but I literally just started. I would have lost him. I had to do CPR. I had to bring him back to life.
What is going on, you guys? Welcome to the first ever episode of Project Your Passion podcast, where we connect individuals, entrepreneurs, coaches to share their passions with the world and how they got to where they are and what were the struggles, what were the things that they succeeded in. So I am here with my lovely friend Ilona Luff, who is a trauma-informed coach, somatic breathwork practitioner, and who helps individuals go through their trauma and their pain and turn it into freedom, purpose, and So the reason why I wanted to bring her on here is because we've had an amazing experience of coaching, but the way I found her was random. Like, we hopped into a coaching program together, and I had no idea that I would meet her through this coaching program. And through that journey of 12 weeks it was. 12 weeks, I was able to get really connected with her, and she has opened up so many doors in my life. She reminds me to always tap into that childlike behavior of mine and come from a place of like wonder and possibility, goofiness that I tend to forget to bring out in myself. So you always remind me of that, which is a beautiful thing. And you've also helped so many individuals, even myself, like find some amazing things, uncover a lot of things through breath. And that's why I brought her on here, because the stuff that she has opened up for me through the work that she does, specifically breath work, the classes that I've been through, have allowed me to uncover, my voice that I hold back a lot, my worthiness, as well as most recently, I found God, which is crazy to say because for so many years I didn't believe in God, and I had this whole, judgment on, church and just that way of being. And so this happened a few weeks ago, and I'm in the question now and looking back into my faith, but I feel so connected. And I wanted to thank you so much because you've unlocked so many doors in so many ways. And I just want to say thank you.
Thank you for beautiful intro and your acknowledgement. I appreciate that.
You're welcome. And so talk to me about your journey and how you got to where you are now. Like, you do breathwork, you coach individuals through their trauma. And so what was it that got you to where you are right now? Like, what made you start this journey and want to help people transform their lives through their traumas?
Well, my journey started probably in my childhood when I've experienced my own personal traumas and losses. And when it really started coming to the surface for me that I really wanted to dive into optimizing human potential and self-development world, that was actually when I was 15 years old, and I got majorly rejected from the biggest dream of my life at that time. I always wanted to be a designer since I was little. I went to art school since I was 6 years old, and it was a huge part of my life from 6 to 15 years old. And when I did get the rejection into the scholarship program that I wanted to pursue to be a designer, it was one of my first most painful moments that are dream related and also related to my sense of self that I've experienced now looking back. But now I view it as it was a redirection, because what happened after I went to study accounting, because that's what was left available because of the enrollment period was ending back in Ukraine at that time, where I was at, and I fell in love with psychology. And ever since then, so it's over 15 years now that I've been on this journey studying human development, studying anything I could possibly study and get my hands on with optimizing human potential and different healing modalities, different growth seminars that I took, and everything that felt alive at the moment. So that's when it all started in the way of connecting to wanting to be of service to humanity on that level. When I was 15.
Wow. Okay. That's a lot, and but beautiful. Was there any moments through when you're 15 years old that you had that made you want to pursue that? Did you have any experiences with something that was going on in your life back in Ukraine that made you want to pursue, that?
Yeah. Well, the biggest thing now, if we can dive into a more personal story, I think it all leads back to my personal story, which I haven't shared on such a level publicly yet, but some of my close people know that how I grew up really imprinted a lot of stress and trauma on my own self at that time. And then it took all these years, I think, knowing and wanting to heal my own self from those aspects. And for those of you listening, for the context, I know you know that, but for the context, my mom died when I was 4 years old, so I was raised by grandma. And my dad was in the picture, in and out of the picture, in and out of jail. He was battling his addiction to heroin. And growing up in the environment that at that time it was all normal, and at that time it was, I really still think I really had a good childhood for what it was. My grandma was really giving and loving and took really good care of me. But wanting to know the answers to my own questions and really support myself in understanding of how to deal with what happened. And through life experiences and accumulating other experiences that have happened, that's what led me to digging deeper and seeking more growth from those experiences.
Wow, that's a beautiful journey. What was the start of that? Like, how did you start that process once you wanted to heal through the traumas of your past? What were the first steps that you started taking, and where were you searching, and what were you learning to get to that place?
I think it really hit home for me that I really would do even deeper levels and layers of work when I actually first had my son. Because all that I thought I worked on, and all the experiences that I even never got to look at, like, for example, losing my mom at 4 years old, I never cried because of that. I would talk about it like it was something I never had. I used to say, I can't miss something I never had. And because I only have very few memories of her. And having my own child and having to say the word mom was, to say the least, triggering at first, because I would refer to him, come to mommy, and in that sense, as well as realizing the responsibility of raising a human being without giving a healthy family model and not knowing what family looks like while being in it and going through my own postpartum journey as a woman. And that's when it all came to whole other level, because when you think you're healed all your things or worked on a lot of things, when you become a parent, it takes it to a whole different level, and you gotta go and dive into and reconnect with the things that you never even had a chance to connect to.
Mm. So what I'm hearing is having your son made you want to take a deeper dive into you as a parent and what you dealt with, so that you don't bring that up to surface to your child.
In a way, yes. And also struggling. I will be very transparent. It was a really dark first year of my life that was supposed to be the most exciting year that you become a parent. It was the hardest year of my life, the first year of his life, dealing with facing my own grief, of grieving the mother that I haven't had, grieving the family that I haven't had, while building my own family, while trying to show up for that little tiny human that has needs and needs your love. And in the same time, being able to, it was really hard to hold space for what was coming up. So that's where I started diving deeper, because the tools that I had at that time were not enough.
Okay.
So that's what caused me to dive deeper into this journey.
Wow.
Of mindset tools, of somatic tools.
Okay. And what tools were that specifically that you started getting into?
So what I've started realizing, doing all the self-development work I could at that time, being a mother to a young child, which was therapy, different courses, different trainings. What I've realized after doing it for about a year and a half, with a lot of intensity with the mindset tools, I realized that there were some things that I couldn't pass with just the mindset work. And that's what led me to discovering and searching for different tools to go deeper with that, so I can finally transmute that pain on the somatic level. Because what started coming up was the pain that we acquire throughout the years. If it's not expressed, our body, our nervous system accumulates that. And that can show up as depression, that can show up as anxiety, that can show up as anger issues, that can show up in a lot of different ways. Mindset work at that moment could only take me so far. And I remember reading every book I could possibly read on healing your childhood trauma. And I remember most of the books were referring to somatic work. And at that time, I was already working closely with breath. So I understood the value of the nervous system, the importance of the nervous system in regulating yourself, the importance of the nervous system in how we behave, what choices we're making, and what takes you into survival state, what takes you into rested and relaxed state. So I had an understanding of that, had some tools with that. However, every single book kept leading to, you gotta release stored trauma on the somatic level. And I started looking for the tools that would do that. And the best and the most accessible tools that were coming up were breathwork. And I remember looking back and already playing with breathwork on a different level, on just regulating level. Because there is so many kinds of breathwork out there.
Yeah, I've noticed that. Yeah, and so before we move forward, what and I want to ask this because I just generally want to know too, is what is somatic work? If you can explain that to me and the listeners as well.
Yeah. So somatic work, soma means body.
Okay.
So anything that has to do with our body and our nervous system.
Got it. Okay.
And
So specifically, that work can be all different types of work.
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And breathwork is just one of the somatic tools that is the most accessible at any point because all we need is our breath. And our breath controls which state we're in. We're either in activated state or we're in a relaxed, regulated state. We can be a little bit stressed. We're either in relaxed state or stressed.
Got it. And so with learning all of these things for yourself, it sounded like, right? Did you plan on, wanting to help others through this, or was it first for you to heal yourself?
So for me, first, it was seeing what learning about breath and connecting to my own inner core after having a child and healing myself physically postpartum, seeing also what it does for my clients and simple grounding breath work, how it supports you in being more regulated and as well as releasing the stress or letting go of that anxiety and giving you very accessible tools to manage all of that. But what happened there was actually very interesting. If you asked me then, there was no way if you asked me then that I would be doing trauma release breath work, I would not believe you at that time because I was so disconnected from my own emotions.
Really? Wow.
And I remember how I started on that journey was when we did counseling with the father of my son, and we had to do an exercise that would allow us to build more intimacy with each other and more better our communication skills. The exercise was to connect to the frustration that you had with your partner and write down where do you feel it in your body. Connect to all the emotions that are coming up and and locate them where you feel them in your body. And I remember trying to fill out that blank, and I remember my partner at that time sitting and writing down where he feels it. And he's like, oh, I feel like a lump in my throat. I'm going to write it here. I feel my chest burning. I'm going to write here. And then naming those feelings. And I was like, all I feel is my thoughts. Like there was only my thoughts that were creating so much distress and so much anxiety and so much internal turmoil that my entire body, I was completely disconnected from my body as somebody who works with bodies all the time. At that time, I think it was for about 4 years of my career as a personal trainer that I realized there is a whole other aspect of connecting to your body that goes beyond physical training and working with muscles. And that's where I realized I want to be able to know. I was honestly impressed and shocked. How is that he can do that and I can't connect to myself and locate it in my body. So that's how disconnected I was.
Wow. And so was that the beginning and notice to take you into the next phase of, okay, I do all this training physically and for myself, but I can't even connect my feelings to my body. From that moment, where did you start looking? Like, what was the next journey for you?
That was one of the first really big steps of realization. And what followed was I started looking for a breathwork facilitator here around in Las Vegas, and I couldn't find anybody locally, but I really wanted to do a session in person instead of Zoom. There was plenty of offerings on Zoom, online, and I did not feel safe doing that. Now looking back, where was my resistance to that? I didn't feel safe doing it on Zoom.
Okay.
I really wanted somebody's presence, and I took my very first breathwork experience. It was in a very large group. It was about 130 people at that time.
Okay.
It was vitality breathwork.
Oh wow. Okay. Yeah, I know of him.
Yeah. Yeah, so that was my very first experience, and my first session just completely blew my mind because my entire session, I was just trembling. My whole session, my whole system, my whole body was just trembling. I couldn't stop it. It was absolutely out of my control. It wasn't anything crazy. It was just like light tremble going on through my body. But that was the very first experience that I had that I realized that I want to dive deeper with this. And very shortly after, I only had that one session. I had my son almost drown on my watch because I was really stressed. I already was doing this work, but I literally just started. And that's when I realized that I want to radically take care of myself instead of self-sacrificing my needs to just be there every day of the waking time of my son, and also start taking care of myself on a level that I need to, and giving myself the space that I need to as a mother to fully be there for him, because I almost lost him and I was 2 feet away.
Wow.
And I would have lost him. I had to do CPR. I had to bring him back to life. And that was a major wake-up call for me. I remember riding in an ambulance with him. He was okay. And we were just driving to the hospital to make sure he's all fine and do all the tests. And I remember sitting, and that was the moment where I promised myself I will no longer self-sacrifice my needs to just maintain the picture that society portrays, that we have to, at our own expense, to always be there, always show up, and self-sacrifice.
Wow.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that. Are can you take us back, if you're open to it, that day of that happening? I mean, what was going on in your mind for you not to be present to that experience, and explain to maybe the listeners or viewers, like, what was going on to get to the point of, your son?
Yeah. One of the factors I already mentioned is going through not having, in 1 year, I haven't slept for more than 4 hours in the stretch. In 1 year, I never caught one day where I would sleep for longer than 4 hours in a row. Not even one day. So even now, me saying that, I don't know how I survived. But that was a major contributor, because when that's when I've learned later, when we don't sleep enough, we can't reset our system, and it contributes to higher levels of cortisol. So our whole functioning is very affected by the quality and amount of sleep that we're getting. Yeah, and on top of that, another thing that was happening for me in my personal life was the separation with the father of my son. We separated shortly after he turned 1 year old. So I started living on my own with my son when he was about 15 months old. And going through the relational stress of being an entrepreneur, building my business, providing for my son, and being in the United States without any of my family members. And honestly, now looking back to lacking the community, lacking the support that I needed at that time, was really affecting how overwhelming everything felt for me. As well as not having the tools that I needed, the tools that I have today, to manage those things. And at that time, my son started having seizures out of nowhere. He started having febrile seizures. The first one happened when he was, I think, 17, 18 months old. So he was under 2 years old, and he was having them out of nowhere. So febrile seizure is when the fever spikes really fast, and infant body cannot handle it.
Okay.
And kids usually outgrow that, but we didn't know what kind of seizures that were until we experienced a few of them, and they were only related to temperature spikes. And it happened 3 times out of nowhere. So I would just go on the playground and play with my son, and we get home and I just noticed slight changes in behavior, and boom, and he starts seizing in my arms. And that was something that really, really felt, and I was by myself with him. I didn't know, I never experienced seeing seizures in anybody before. And that was really scary, to say the least, as well as put me in on another level of stress to be on the daily, like what's happening with my son. Is this something neurologic? Do we need to do anything about this? Because it was happening out of nowhere. And going through that relational stress and the change of the dynamic and dealing with breakup and the heartbreak that I was having at that time, on top of all of that, really put my nervous system at the level where I was reaching my capacity. And to take full responsibility, I did not set those boundaries for myself that, you know what, I need this time. Somebody needs to step in and take care and support me with my son, because I can't do this by myself most of the time. You know, and I could do that for all that time, but I've reached the ceiling to realize that I needed more. I needed to be there for me.
Wow. Yeah, I feel like a lot of, obviously I'm not a parent, but I feel like a lot of mothers go through that, especially ones that are building their business and entrepreneurs. And, I see it a lot where, parents are, being mothers, but then they're working on their business and working on their job, or, still working in it. There's a woman that I just met, and she has a daughter, and she's also pregnant, like I think 5 months, and I see her working, 6 days a week, like just nonstop, and I can tell, like she's exhausted, and to not know, because our ego tells us, you need to get things done, you need to work, you need to do all the things, and so that, number one, obviously provide for yourself, but provide for now another human being, right? And so then being so disconnected to all the things and not putting yourself first, or giving yourself even a little bit of time to down regulate and be present. And then, a lot of things traumatically happen to, whether it's the health, I believe she had to go to the hospital just recently, and it's a very I don't know how to explain it, because our natural way of being is like wanting to do more. We need to do more for others, right? I mean, for others, but then we need to do for ourselves, and I think we forget about that. Number one, because it causes us to, for me, which would be like burnout or exhaustion, right? Where I am getting close into accidents, or I'm injuring. It's funny because when I'm in those places of like survival, I would say, I notice I'm very clumsy. I'm very fast paced. Like but it's funny because in my mind it's those small little injuries. I'm like, I cut myself on the hand. I dropped something. Like I'm at the gym, I bumped into the weights, and I'm like, I noticed like these little like minor things in my mind, but I'm so in the go, 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 go mode that I'm unconsciously injuring myself or making mistakes with client stuff. I'd forget to like send certain things in video edits or in the emails and completely just miss like super crucial stuff, right? And so I think it, to sum up, what I'm hearing is, when I tend to be in a space of constant survival, I tend to miss like the little things, and as well as miss myself, be completely disconnected from, what's around us, right?
Yeah. And we live in a society where this culture of bigger, better, faster, more is constantly being presented to us in a glorified way,
Yeah.
where we're celebrated how much we can accomplish. Oh, you're a mom, you only have 1 year old, and you run your business, you're totally self-employed. Wow. Oh, on top of that, you're a single mom too. You crushing it.
Yeah.
It's being celebrated. And not that achievement doesn't deserve celebration, but the point of realizing that our ego hates stillness and presence. It's like we go from one extreme to another. We either bury ourselves with busyness and the doingness that we miss out on being present to what comes up for us emotionally, of what thoughts are we thinking, that we start even living a reality that is not even intentional, that something that we continue recreating day by day, moment by moment, because we're so on autopilot with things.
Yeah, absolutely. I think I easily go into those autopilot places. Well, I used to a lot, and it's funny. I've done a lot of work, which I've been grateful to meet you through that work. But before that, it was always just, I need to do more, achieve more. I need to be better. And I think my surroundings too, I surrounded myself with people that weren't striving to better themselves. It was just like the same, like 9 to 5, go to work, party on the weekends, and then avoid all the other things. And so, I was always on this like hamster wheel of like wanting more. How can I get more money, make more? I'm gonna have to work more so that I can have more money, so that I can ultimately party more, because I was in that, you know what I mean, like, so that I can do that. But then always realizing that like there's something missing in that, because I'm never fully truly satisfied or present in my life. And so until I was able to like uncover like me chasing worthiness from losing my father when I was 12. My father passed away, obviously, from suicide, and I didn't know that obviously until I was 18, but my mom told me it was from a stroke. But I didn't realize that I was holding on to that trauma of my dad passing away. When I found out, I really never, like, I always thought in the back of my mind, it's not real. We came to the house. He was supposed to pick me up from middle school or elementary school, and he never did. And so we were at school late, and my mom had to pick us up. It was like 6. We pulled to the house. My mom went into the house, and then came out and was like, "Hey, you need to go to your friend's house." And so I didn't know at the time what was going on. An ambulance came, and then my mom told me he passed away. And so in that moment, I didn't realize, but I didn't believe. I thought it was fake. Like, I thought that my dad would like just ran away or didn't want to be with us. And so whenever I'd be like at the mall or out and about shopping with my mom, I'd always assume that like I'm gonna turn the corner and see my dad with another family, or just see him. And it was a crazy thought. I just did not believe that. And then I think through the whole journey of my life, I always never felt good enough with women, with what I had. I always wanted more, because I never thought I was good enough for my dad, being around. And to piggyback on the premises, when I was 18, I found out that he committed suicide. And so I had so much resentment, because at that time I was like, oh, anybody who who quits on life is a quitter. They're not like, they have a weak mind. They're pussies. Like I literally said that to my, like, about my dad. I'm like, my dad was a pussy. He couldn't handle life and he left us. You know what I mean? But underneath that was like the pain of like, damn, like he couldn't. I'm not good enough for him to want to stay alive to support his family. Like that was the underlying conversation that I was coming from. And so for many years I was always trying to achieve these things, but then I'd get caught up in like, I'd do good and then I feel like I'm doing great, and then I would sabotage it by like partying, doing drugs, and it was just this repetitiveness because no matter where I got to, I was never good enough. And so then I would like drug, and then I would like crash, and I'd go on these crazy benders. And so I think being able to be present to that and acknowledge that for myself has allowed me to be able to like create, not from that space of like lack, but from the space of like, okay, I'm choosing consciously that I would like to create for my life because I am choosing to show that I can do it, not from a place of like, oh, worthiness conversations, right? But from I'm good enough to just create whatever I want, right? And so yeah.
Yeah. And, you know, to piggyback off your powerful share, it's not what happens to us, it's what we make it mean. And a lot of times it's so unconscious. Like there's no way you were sitting there and thinking, well, out of all the possibilities that I have to make my dad's death mean something to me, I'm going to think this, probably he did this with this intention. I guess what I'm saying in other words is that it's often very unconscious meaning that we give to things that if left unaddressed, they start driving our behavior and our lives. And that ego wants us to keep chasing something on outside of us because it believes that only when we fix the outside, which is an illusion, because at the end of the day, whenever we get there, like you shared, you got to the level that you thought was your ceiling, you realize this is not my ceiling, this is now my floor. So the work is always inside out, and I'm so proud of you and the work you've done. And I know you haven't shared the fullness of your story. That was where this journey, I know you just touched on, where you started with that journey and how you started getting into partying and all of that, what you did to avoid that pain that was probably coming up for you, or to distract yourself with that, and how you were able to overcome that. I think there's so much beauty in your strength and how you were able to do that for you, if you don't mind sharing.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, it's interesting because through the journey, like when I found out that my dad passed away when I was 12, we started hanging around. And to piggyback all of this, you know, it's crazy to think about the people that we surround ourselves definitely dictates our way of being, right? And so at the time, I'm 12 years old, and we started hanging out with people in the neighborhood, and they were just very bad influences at the time. They had good intentions, but they were a little bit older. You know, they were about like 15, and they were into doing drugs, like smoking weed. But as crazy as it was at that age, there were some that were smoking meth. And so, you know, we didn't know any better. I didn't know any better. And as well as my mom, she didn't know any better because, you know, I'm sure she felt like she let herself down, let her family down, because, you know, I couldn't imagine being married to somebody and my significant other, you know, ending their life because, you know, I would think that I'm not good enough, right? And all this other stuff. And so through that, you know, we started doing drugs, like smoking meth at 12. Like that's when I started, and I was doing that, I remember, for about 2 years. And it got to a point where I was up for 3, 4, 5 days even sometimes. and I would see things in the corner of my eyes in the room, like creatures or people, and I would go look in the corner and see if there's somebody there. Like, I was imagining physically things coming up to me, right? And like underneath the couch and like what's behind the bed, like these shadow creatures, that's what they call it. And then I would remember even times that there was like spider webs wrapping around my skin. Like I feel like there was a spider like always crawling on me, and I was like, I would lose my mind, and I was like, I can't do this anymore. Like I had like a breakdown, and then I would remember I was in 7th grade, and I had to do summer school, and in summer school, I would go during the daytime. You know what I mean? Summer school's in like the middle of the day for a few hours, and I had this experience where I'm sitting in front of the class, and I was up for like 3 days already, and there was this kid that was sitting like 4 rows above me, and for some reason I thought he was pointing a gun at me, and so I had this crazy breakdown where I'm writing in my notebook like my death letter, like, Mom, I love you, I'm so sorry for da 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 da. Like I'm writing this whole letter about like saying goodbye because I thought this kid was gonna shoot me and have a gun, and I fully believed that. Like that's how crazy like my imagination was when you're on these drugs and I'm up for 3-4 days, you know what I mean? And so that was happening, and I completely broke down. I was crying, bawling, and shaking, and the teacher came in, you know, was like, what's going on? And I was like, just full on breakdown, you know what I mean? Like mental breakdown. And then they called my mom. I was in the office, and she came and got me, and you know, took me out. And you know, I was like, the kid has a gun, da 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 da. And they, you know what I mean? The kid was like, what are you talking? Like, they eventually like got the kid, and he obviously did not have a gun. And so I'm sitting there, and I'm like, holy shit! Like I made all of this up. Like this whole thing was like made up in my mind. It was, you know what I mean? And I had no control over it. And that was, I think, the moment that I was like, I can't live like this anymore. On top of all the other like shadow creatures and stuff like that. And so, you know, I told myself like, I'm not going to live another day like this. And I completely cold turkeyed myself. Like, and I don't know if you know anything about like drug addicts, but to completely, if you're doing a drug for a long period amount of time, let's say months, and to completely stop that is really, really, really hard. But the overwhelmed feeling that I knew that was out of my control, and I was creating these crazy stories, made me say like, I cannot live like this one more day. Like I am better than this. And so I completely locked myself in a room for, I think it was like 3-4 days, like cold sweats, trembles, like wanting to, you know what I mean? Like
at 12 years old?
At that time, I think I was 14 now, 14 or 15, and I was just like, I fucking can't do this anymore, right? And so yeah, I completely, you know, detoxed myself by myself, and then that was like the stepping stone to my mom eventually like quitting, you know, cause she wanted to do that too, because you know she knew it wasn't good for her, obviously, and so she did that, and then you know it kind of started the transformation of like, okay, like, well, not even the transformation, but like that was possible. So then I started going to school again, and I was in, I think at that time, 5th grade, no, I was 7th, 8th, like 8th or 9th grade. And so I started getting back into school, and then right when I got into high school, you know, I felt like things were going good again, but then now I'm in a whole new transitional period, and that's when I like fitting in became a thing. And so I started doing drugs in high school, but through that, I would go into these habits. It was these patterns. I do good, you know. So like I got off the meth. I was doing good in school. Like I got a girlfriend, you know, a year or two later, and I started like feeling really good about myself. And then, you know, and I had a job too. And then I got to a point where, you know, it didn't feel good enough, and so I wanted to fit in more. And so I started selling drugs and doing drugs. And then, you know, I got into like the cocaine and the alcohol and partying like a teenager. And so that was another thing that went on for so many years. I think I was on and off, you know, alcohol and cocaine until I was about 30. But there was one point that I was doing pain pills, and through the pain pills, I got to a really low, just like the meth, where like I was up and I was seeing things and all this shit was happening. So I cold turkey and stopped that. But like it's crazy because I would have these same patterns of like doing really good, and then I would crash, and burn, and then, have to come back up. And so not until I did, I had this boss that really told me to start taking time for myself. Like, he sat me down in his office and he goes, "Do you ever take time for yourself?" And I was like, "Yeah, like 10 minutes in the shower is like my alone time, like 10 minutes. And he goes, "No, like meditation or the gym or journaling or anything." And I was like, "Oh, no, I don't do any of that." And so he was like, "Okay, so what I need you to do is I need you for the next 2 weeks to do meditation for 10 minutes. I need you to go to the gym for 30 minutes a day or go for a run, and then journal 10 things you're good at and 10 things that you like about yourself or that you love about yourself." And I was like, "Okay, cool, great." And he goes, "No, like, you need to do this or you're fired." And I was a manager, like, of this company. And so I was like, "Oh shit," like, okay. So jokingly, I was like, "I got this," and I did it. And I didn't realize that through that process opened up the whole door of like self-development, diving deeper with myself and all the things that I was suppressing and not acknowledging just by like sitting and being quiet with myself, you know what I mean? Because, I was like, there's no way I can meditate, like I have way too many thoughts, too much is going on. I have ADHD. I was telling me all those stories, right? And so then taking the moment to sit down with myself and really like feel, first like hear my thoughts. And then eventually after I was hearing my thoughts, I would feel these emotions. And then I remember a month or two later, I was doing yoga and I was in like the baby pose. What are these poses? And just emotions start coming and I start crying. Everything that I was holding on to, I'm just bawling tears. And I know these, and this is somatic work, right? Where our body holds these traumas and these things. And I didn't realize through yoga that it was going to open up all the emotions and feelings that I was suppressing for years. And so that was the first moment that I was like, holy shit, like, and it felt so good to cry. Like I hadn't cried in so many years. My brother, I think my brother a year prior to that moment had passed away from an overdose, and I didn't even cry when I found him at all. Like I was so numb to my experience of life that when I seen him, I'm like, oh shit, okay, like what? How am I gonna tell my mom this? That was the first thing I said, but I didn't feel the emotion. I felt like fuck, my mom, this is gonna suck for my mom. Like that was the thoughts that came through, and so through that experience with yoga, like opened up this whole door of like, okay, me, and uncovering more of myself and what else is underneath there. And then so I got invited into that. Opening that door got me connected into the self-development program called Choice Center. And it was interesting because, I was doing really good. I got promoted to a GM in my business, not in my business, but like for the business that I was working for, the CBD company. And that was the CEO of that company was the one who told me to like meditate and like take time for myself, right? And so I was on this like new journey of self-discovery, and I got a friend that came to me and introduced Choice Center, which how we connected through years later. But that was the beginning of my, I would say, self-development healing phase, to really uncover like the things that I was holding on to, a lot of the shame, a lot of the guilt, the unworthy conversations that I was still living from, and not realizing that was those patterns, because I knew I was good enough to create these things and do good and be good in my life. But then, when I got to that, ceiling, I would self-sabotage because it still felt empty, right? And so that was a beautiful journey of, my life, and how now I'm here, doing what I passionately love, is connecting with other passionate, beautiful souls like yourself. So, yeah.
I love that you started such a beautiful journey to being where you're at today with simply creating space with being with yourself. that so many people are afraid of. We would rather go and do a million other things than just simply be with what's present for us, with what's coming up for us, or just simply be with the fullness of our experience, whatever that is.
Yeah. Yeah, I didn't realize how important taking time, even if it's 10 minutes, not in the shower, but like intentionally being with myself would open the doors to, all the other things, right? And so I think, I'm very grateful for, that presence that I was able to create. And then now into the things that I do, weekly, as well as like, every couple months I do your breath work that allows me to open up like the doors that I still, close, or that I don't want to, that I don't know that's there, right? And I think that's the beautiful thing about what you do is you take people where they need to go on their own. And you don't obviously know what that journey is going to open up for them when they go through one of your sessions. And so, that's, I think, such a beautiful thing to experience, is each individual person's experience through your breath work is like very unique. And so, with that, what got you into the actual like making it a practice and being a practitioner of breath?
Yeah, that's a good question. I never seen myself leading breathwork sessions. If you told me that I'll be doing that for somebody who was terrified of their own emotions or simply didn't even know how to fully connect to my own inner world, I would be very surprised. But what got me on this journey was actually going through experience at the leadership university at Choice, where I reconnected with the sense of my fullest expression and realized that I already, before even going to Choice, I already felt like something deeper is calling me. And I felt like I am just playing small by being a personal trainer, even though I was doing different kinds of coaching and utilizing different tools on the level of behavior change specialist and with the breathing aspect of things. I knew I was helping people on a little bit different level than just personal training, but something in me felt that I'm still playing small, that there is something something else I am meant to do. And going through Choice made it extremely clear what that next step is. And I think the beauty about any work, and especially the work that is done in the community, because at the end of the day, this program is so amazing because it has the cultivation of community, and we are relational beings. There is a difference when you do a session one-on-one with breathwork, or coaching session one-on-one, or you do a breathwork in a community. None of it is better. None of it is above the other. They're just different on their own levels. However, there is so much beauty in the communal aspect of healing things or doing the deep work in the community. So when seeing the impact that breathwork had on my own system, on my own world, and how quickly things started turning around for me, and how fast these tools work, and having always the passion towards community. I used to teach boot camp classes. I used to teach breathing classes for prenatal and postpartum women. So all of those were little stepping stones for me to really fall in love with the communal aspect of things and creating communities for people to connect and to realize that we're, at the end of the day, we're all in this together and we're all just walking each other home. And that's where it became very clear to me that I would love to take this knowledge and the skill and take it to a different level, another level, to support anybody who needs this. Because when I was looking for it, it wasn't easily accessible at that time here in Las Vegas. When I really needed a class for breathwork, there was nobody that I knew that would do releases, trauma releases like that. There were other Kundalini breathworks, which is amazing. It's just different. And it felt like it was time to step into that service on a whole different level.
Well, and so through that, you took some kind of training or...
Yeah, I participated. I found somebody that at that time, I followed Stephen Jaggers for quite some time. And I always loved the integrity and the energy of Stephen. And when I was choosing between which breathwork styles to go with, I tried different ones. I tried neurodynamic breathwork. I've tried rebirthing breathwork. Amazing stuff. And I think to each its own. His style really resonated with me personally because it was trauma informed, and I just trusted the inner knowing that this is the right direction. It just was very clear that this is the route I want to take, and going through the training allowed me to learn the whole process on the very level of how things need to be facilitated to provide that safe container and safe experience. Because at the end of the day, human body is so intelligent. It knows where you need to go. It knows exactly what you need in the moment, and also it knows how to heal itself. And we just need to get out of our way to reconnect with that intelligence. And all breathwork sessions is holding space for your own process.
Wow. Yeah, you said something very profound, is our body is our innate intelligence, and we have, like, our body knows what it needs to heal, but we don't ever allow ourselves to acknowledge when our body needs to do that, and when to slow down, or when to be with ourselves so that we can uncover what is ultimately there for us. But I think for myself specifically is, I notice like my body telling me to slow down because I'm exhausted and tired. I'm like, no, fuck that. Like, let me, I need to do more. And so, yeah, wow. And so let me ask you, what does breath work? And I know you're a facilitator for it, but what does breath work do for you?
Love it. Thank you for the question. For me, it really, no matter which state I am in, if I'm a little stressed, or if I'm feeling anxious, or just wake up and I'm feeling a little off, it allows me to connect to myself, beyond my ego structure, the things that we acquired in conditioning, in the process of conditioning, in the process of our lives. It allows me to connect to me outside of my patterns, that allowed me to survive. It allows me to really change the state in a very short period of time. You might not always have an epiphany during the breath work, and that's what I love about breath work, that you might not always have anything crazy happen during your 10-minute or 15-minute daily practice, but you will always have the change state. You will always feel more grounded. You will always feel, I always feel more centered. I always feel more connected to who I am and what truly matters. And we as humans, we need that reminder as often as we can possibly have.
Wow. That is beautiful. You know, I think for myself, it's whenever I do, you know, your breath work, it always uncovers the thing that I am most resistant to in my day-to-day, that I don't want to go through, or the things that I'm not acknowledging about myself. You know, like the last, not this one, this most recent one, but the one prior, it was my voice. You know, I tend to, you know, resist or suppress my voice because I feel like, oh, I'm too much, or I talk too much, or I'm too loud. You know what I mean? And then I, you know, I'm just talking a lot of, you know, nonsense, and then I don't get value. That was another one too. Is like I don't get value, or not worthy, and so, you know, it allows me to notice like instantly, like my throat, like what got like tight when I was doing the breath work, and through releasing that, it was a big realization of like I have a voice, and through that voice I can help others. And I had helped another person next to me, because I remember I was releasing and breathing really loud, and I think I started screaming, and the next person next to me started screaming, and it allowed, you know, I shared with that person. I was like, oh dude, I'm sorry if I got loud. He goes, no dude, that allowed me to get loud and start, you know, releasing, and it opened up the door, and I was like, oh wow, like maybe I'm just making up this whole story of, you know, I'm too much, but realizing that I could be helping others. And he said that too, and I was like, holy shit. Like, and so that's the beauty, I think, for me with breathwork. That's for me, is allows me to see what's in my way, and the things that I'm, you know, like unconsciously doing, that are just, you know, the walls that I don't want to, you know, go through. And so thank you for always, you know, providing that space for not just myself, but for others. And let me ask you, obviously I'm sure this is probably one of the reasons why you do what you do, but what is it that you love about what you do?
I love this. The biggest thing that really, really fulfills my cup is seeing other people get free. Once you're free, even if you experience that freedom, maybe it's your first time experiencing that freedom for that 5 minutes during your session, if it's a breath work. In the coaching environment, it's through using different tools of realizing where in life we're not free. Once you experience that, it allows you to create more authentic life, and seeing people creating more authentic and aligned lives, seeing people show up in a whole different level, in a different way in their relationship. People make different choices. Seeing people live to their biggest potential is my favorite thing about doing any of this work.
Wow. And let me ask you, from somebody who was very hesitant on doing like your first class, you know, I was I was like, I did it one time, but I was like, there's always that resistance, like I don't want to do this, but I knew after I was like, oh my god, like it's great. And I tend to have a little bit of resistance of fear, and I think the fear is like what's gonna come up, you know. And so for anybody listening, for the viewers, what would you recommend them to, like somebody who's thinking about doing breath work that has never did it before? What would you say to them?
Trust your inner knowing, because you definitely want to honor where your system is at. And a lot of times we're just really disconnected with our intuition and trust. So we start thinking this is our intuition when in fact it's our ego. And discernment there is intuition is very quiet. It's like, I should probably do it. And that's it. And that's all you hear. Oh, this is something I need to eventually try, and this has been calling me, right? And ego is, oh my gosh, if you go there, what if this comes up? What are people going to think? And now I don't actually have time. I have to do this. I have to go and pick up that. Actually, oh, how much is this? Or, oh, it's on the other side of the town. Oh no, it's Saturday. I have things going on Saturday. Actually, I don't even need to do that. Let me get busy. That's when you know that's ego. So having that discernment and always trusting that when you know that this is your, people usually say, sometimes I hear people say, oh, I'm not ready. We have for anything, right? In the coaching world or with anything in life. I'm not ready yet to face my pain. Where ready is not necessarily a feeling that we're here waiting for. Ready is a decision that we make. Because a lot of times postponing feeling the very thing that needs to be felt does not get rid of the feeling. It amplifies it. So knowing also when and who you're doing your breath work with. If you see the practitioner that does not resonate with you, trust that it doesn't resonate. And another, probably I should have started with this, is I wouldn't recommend jumping right in, especially for people that have a lot of stored trauma that they know, like big T traumas that they haven't explored yet. I wouldn't recommend jumping in full head on into big somatic release. If that feels really unsafe, if that is where resistance is, try with daily practice of just building that relationship with your breath. Try with little practices where you just do the activated part of mouth breathing that activates and makes you feel uncomfortable. Just for a little bit. There are tons of content on YouTube. I myself have daily practices that I've put together for that purpose to just ease your way in and build that relationship with your breath and build the capacity of your nervous system to have that inner experience.
Wow.
Yeah.
You said something very, very aligned with a lot of the way I have done things that were very uncomfortable, was the intuition and knowing, right? And then, my ego coming up with all the excuses and, what it's going to look like, how much it's going to cost. And then specifically, then, when you're ready, but there is no ready. And I think it's funny because the first time I did, any kind of coaching, which was back, I think almost 2 years now, through Troy Center, I was never ready. And Robin, who's like a mentor of mine, she was like, well, what is ready? When I have the tools and I'm ready, but in reality, like, there is no perfect timing than the now, right? And I think, to piggyback on what you were saying about if somebody is ready to, take that leap into breath work, your body's going to know. And I think it's always that little bit of uncomfortability that I find, but then I'm like, you know what, there's always a breakthrough in that, because what is uncomfortable for me, I know I get to work through, because there's freedom on the other side. And so, yeah, thank you so very much for taking the time out of your day to connect with me and being a beautiful breath of fresh air in my day. And for all the listeners and viewers, how can they find you, and what are the services that you provide for anybody looking that may have uncovered that they're maybe dealing with some of their traumas right now, or some things that they're struggling with, like what are some services that you provide? How can they find you?
Thank you. Thank you for having me. It was a blast to connect with you and to learn even some new things that I haven't heard about you before from the angle that you've shared. So it means a lot to connect with you on such a level. And the easiest place to find me is on Instagram at Ilona Luff.
That's
And
underscore love, right?
yep.
Okay.
And also the other support I provide is coaching services, which you can inquire by emailing me at transformwithlove, one word, at gmail.com, or simply reach out on Instagram.
That's Luff, spelled Luff.
Yes.
Correct?
Yes.
Awesome. Well, Alana, I love you. Thank you so very much for taking the time. And until next time, guys, we will see you on the other side.